Mercedes have secretly tested out new mechanical parts on their W15 with both Lewis Hamilton and George Russell across the opening two practice sessions of last week's Hungarian Grand Prix weekend. As the team prepare to introduce their next actual major upgrade package onto the W15. This comes after the team used up one of their two Curfew jokers for the 2024 Formula One season on Saturday evening as they headed into qualifying. And alongside that, there are other remarks made by Lewis in the press after the opening day of the weekend.
Little tweaks, but the car was pretty much the same, and there's a particular thing that we had left that we're changing to this weekend that we probably need to go back on.
And even more telling than that was the post-race radio messages between himself and his race engineer, Bono. Now, for a little more context as to why the breaking of curfew is an important piece of information, that would be because teams don't generally use up their jokers unless they are either introducing a major upgrade onto the car for the weekend, or secondly, the team need to take off developmental components that take a substantial amount of time and effort to do so. So it had to have been for one of those reasons. And with the only small update being used across the weekend, which was a change in their rear lower corner deflector just behind of the brakes on the W15 at the rear, there is only one conclusion to make as far as I'm concerned as to why they used up one of their jokers. And coupled with that, the comments Hamilton made after these Friday practice sessions, it adds an extra weight to my belief. Now, while we don't have any sort of definitive information from not only the team, but also journalists or publications that would be in the know, we can have somewhat of a calculated guess as to what Mercedes have been cooking up with regards to the next major upgrade package for the W15. I myself have long expected substantial changes to one of the final areas of the W15 which hasn't seen some sort of update or upgrade applied to it, and that is of course the side pods. Now, I've always thought these have looked quite basic on the W15, particularly when you compare them to the likes of the other teams in and around the positions in which they find themselves fighting on every race weekend, which of course is the overbite design philosophy that Red Bull introduced this season, or even the undercut or underbite that you see across the grid as well. Mercedes are what I like to call in a halfway house. They've neither gone with an overbite or an underbite with their side pod in their opening. And so I feel this is the area in which any potential major upgrades could potentially come to this area of the W15. And I wouldn't be surprised if that turns out to be the case. Now, of course, away from this one guesstimation of mine, there are other avenues from which Mercedes could have used these so-called mechanical upgrade parts or developmental parts from which to make other sort of calculations for the upgrade. And I feel one of those could be the internal layout of the W15 in and around the side pods. So of course, the internals of a Formula One car are extremely important because they too are another area in which the aerodynamics are governed by, because all the airflow that goes in through the side pod inlet of course makes its way to the back of the vehicle. And of course, having as clean a kind of direction and flow through the vehicle is going to help optimize their package even more. So maybe they've redesigned the internals in terms of the radiator layout, or just perhaps the way in which the air is traveling through that particular portion of the car. That's another area I could foresee them making kind of changes to that. Whether they make a huge amount of changes in terms of having a complete redesign of that would only be done if the team find that there's enough gains to be had from it, of course, because we have to also remember there is the budget cap that is in place for all Formula One teams. And we have two perfect examples from two different teams that have used nearly 50% of their allocation this season. and those two are the Ferrari and Aston Martin outfits. Now, Ferrari have used 50% of their budget for the season with the two major upgrade packages which they've introduced in Imola and of course in Barcelona. Now, while the first major upgrade did do what the team was expecting it to do, that could not be the same for when it came time to introduce the Barcelona upgrades. And in fact, they found that that package reintroduced the porpoising through high-speed corners, and so they've gone back potentially 3 to 4 months in terms of the development time with their SF24. And the same can be said of the Aston Martin team and their AMR24. It's very much the similar case there with regards to their Imola package. That one was a absolutely huge astronomical upgrade, and bolting all the parts onto the car just did not work for them, and they fell further and further down the grid. Now, they too brought an upgrade package for the last race, and it seemed to have lifted them back into that fifth force behind the leading quartet. And this is the key component of all of this. Now, no matter what Mercedes were trialing out with their developmental parts, it all has to make sure and adds up to a substantial gain, because we've heard time and time again, we're bringing a major upgrade package for the last two events, and we presumed it would arrive for Hungary, and it did not. So whether this now major upgrade that they potentially bring actually arrives for Spa or after the summer break, only time will tell. But there's one thing for certain: we, yourselves, and everyone knows, including the Mercedes team, they cannot afford to get this major upgrade wrong when it comes to the W15, because it could potentially be the last major upgrade of the season for them before turning their attention to, of course, the W16 and putting further and further resources and development time into it. Because a team always has to find the balancing act between working on the current car and the car of next season. Well guys, I'm going to wrap the video up here. Hope you've all enjoyed it. If you have, of course, do leave a like in the video down below. If you're new and have found this video, of course, be sure to subscribe if you've enjoyed it, and check out all my other videos on the channel, as I have a whole ton of them. Right guys, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all later in the week for Belgium.